Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Webinar Wednesday. We're so glad that you're able to join us on this Wednesday afternoon. And yes, we are live, unless, of course, you're watching this recording from the future. So we have a great special guest for you all today. This is Ian Downie, and you may know him from Patron Point. You may know him from some other library organizations, but he is here today from his new organization, Growing Libraries. And I'll let him speak to most of what they do through this presentation, but just as a little teaser, it is going to be data driven and it is a way to get your library out into your community, especially in those pockets that you may not be reaching with your traditional marketing or outreach. So Ian's going to show you how we're able to do that with growing libraries. So a couple housekeeping items. You can ask questions throughout this presentation. Please put those in the questions panel and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. And we do also have a special promo going for folks who are able to register. If you're watching the recording from the future, sorry about that. Come stop by ALA and maybe we can talk through some of those. But if you're here today or you registered in advance, we have some special pricing for you. So stay tuned to hear what that looks like. And also, like I said, this is recorded. So if you would like to rewatch this or share this with any of your colleagues, it will be available starting tomorrow. All right, without further ado, Ian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ria. Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I just wanted to thank TLC for the opportunity. It's always nice when we're very partner centric as a business, and it's always good to work with other vendors that appreciate partnership. And TLC, I've worked with those guys for a great number of years, as Ria mentioned, in other businesses, always hugely supportive of their partners. So thank you for the opportunity. And again, thanks everyone for joining. So, without further ado, let me start skipping through the presentation. So, as Ria said, Ian Downie, founder and CEO of Growing Libraries, a relatively new business founded not that long ago. We launched the business almost 12 months ago now at ALA last year, which was very, very exciting. So, it's been a bit of a whirlwind 12 months for us. So, what I wanted to do today is give you an overview of what we do and how we can help you grow your library in a number of different ways. So for our agenda today, I'm going to give you a bit of background as to where this has come from and why the product is in the space it's in. I want to review some of the basics about why libraries need to grow. What are the benefits of libraries having more cardholders and reaching more of the community? What does that mean for you? And draw some parallels with other membership organizations. What tips and tricks can we borrow from other organizations around the industries that they use to reach into their prospect base and grow their community and customer numbers? And then I'm going to give you an overview of our platform and some of the services that we wrap around that. So there we go. Ian Downie, founder CEO of Growing Libraries. As Ria mentioned, some other businesses I've been involved with. My first foray into public library land was with a product we created called Collection HQ. Some of you may know that product. That's where I first came across TLC as well. When we launched the product into the US market, we had a number of TLC libraries using Collection HQ, both on Carl and Library.Solution. So Collection HQ is a business we founded way back, based here in the UK in Scotland, and we eventually sold that to Baker and Taylor. Some of you will remember them. Unfortunately, they demised, but Collection HQ is still going very strongly. And we continue to partner with them. We've got some very exciting announcements we're going to be making at ALA of some developments. So any of you that have got Collection HQ, there'll be some exciting integrations with Growing Libraries that we'll be announcing at ALA in the coming weeks. So after I'd sold Collection HQ, created a business, as Ria said, Patron Point. Some of you may be familiar with that. Patron Point was looking at another solution effectively around library marketing automation. So we were looking at a solution that other industries use all the time. Marketing automation is widely used in lots of sectors. And what we did is effectively create Patron Point, which is a marketing automation platform, couple it up with the ILS and let libraries benefit from all of those tips and tricks that all those other industry sectors use marketing automation for. The frustration I had with Patron Point, and we sold that company to SpringShare a few years back, was that Patron Point wasn't, and not just Patron Point, other businesses weren't doing anything for the rest of the community. Patron Point is all about engaging your existing customers. And that's a really important piece of the puzzle, right? Trying to renew their membership, engage them, educate them about what the library can offer them, what it does, keep them engaged and renew their membership. That's an important piece of the puzzle, but it's not reaching out into the community. It's only dealing with the people you have in your ILS. So that's why we formed Growing Libraries. Growing Libraries is unique in that all we do is basically look at the community as a whole and try and help libraries grow their cardholder numbers through targeted outreach. That's fundamentally what we do. So that's the background. All of those businesses are software driven. They're all software as a service. So you subscribe to all of these platforms. So we've got a lot of experience as a team, and it's the same team behind Growing Libraries as it was behind Collection HQ, as it was behind Patron Point, as it is here. So we've got the same leadership team, same sales group, etc. So we're really excited about what's happening and what we've seen in the past 12 months. The Growing Libraries story feels like it's going to be hopefully a 3-play. It feels very, very similar to our experiences, early stage growth that we experienced with the other businesses. So one of the stats that we used to justify building Growing Libraries was the stat that came from the IMLS or PLS study in 2022 was that on average, 49% of the community has a library card, which means there's 51% of the community that does not. So there's plenty of headroom there in terms of growth opportunities. As I mentioned, we're going to look at some of the benefits of having more library card holders. But what we find is there's a huge range in that 49%. When you actually describe what 49% actually means, does that mean anyone that's ever had a library card? Because we know some libraries do not actually purge their membership. So, we have some people that have, 150% of their community has a library card because they've never expired any of their cards. Ultimately, what we're actually trying to do is to help you serve your community actively rather than just, play on the statistics. We're actually trying to help you reach into the rest of the people who are not using the library now and get them back into the library or have them sign up for a card in the first place. What we found was that most libraries have strategic plans or some other document that talks about their strategic ambitions. And within those documents, quite often there are statistics. For example, there might be, some research conducted saying, for example, 34% of our households in our community have children perhaps under a particular age, for example, and that may lead to some kind of strategic direction that says, one of the challenges for the library is to reach into those households and try and provide services, story time and literacy kits and preschool development kits maybe for those children to encourage those families to bring their kids to the library and to join the library, and of course summer reading, etc. That's all really, really good from a strategic plan point of view, and quite often in those strategic plans there might be map views, heat maps of where these households reside within the community of the library. Again, all very good. The challenge is that most of that data is actually based on census data. And as we know, census data is anonymized. So whilst you might know that 34% of your households have kids, you don't know which households they actually are, which household addresses and families are we talking about here. So because it's anonymized, you can't actually reach into these households. So one of my previous customers in the Patron Point era, they said, well, what we get from our strategic plan is the data tells us what the crowd looks like, but we don't know who's in it. And we wrote that into our business justification document when we launched Growing Libraries. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to figure out who's in it. So the instruction we got from these customers was, please go build us something. So that's exactly what we did. And of course, that is what we now know as Growing Libraries. So data-driven marketing isn't something new. As I say, Patron Point is also data-driven. It's just looking at a different audience. But in our context, data-driven marketing allows you to do analysis, and in our case, analysis of the whole community, not just your existing customers. it allows you to then break down your community in a huge number of ways. We'll go into those ways and how they can benefit a library later, because the same as, we know from our patron point times, marketing and segmentation is vital. We don't broadcast messages anymore. Everything is very targeted and relevant. So, for example, if you know a household contains senior citizens, don't be telling them about story time. And if you know the family has children under 6, don't be telling them about your resume workshop. Tell those guys about story time and tell the seniors about all the services you offer for senior citizens. So it's about getting the right message to the right people. And then the engagement piece is also very important. It's important to create timely messaging. It's important to create attractive messaging. But importantly, it's also crucial to actually track that engagement and monitor it so you can improve it. So it's all about, that's what marketing's about. Just stepping back to segmentation for a second, one of the most crucial parts of segmentation in growing a library is understanding who is a customer and who is not to start with. Because if you have to send the same postcard to every family in the community who has children under 6, you're wasting probably half of that budget, because half of them already have a library card. So knowing who has a card and who doesn't is vital. And of course, as we did with Patron Point, as we did with Collection HQ, and as we do with growing libraries, we connect to the ILS. So we know who has a library card and who does not. And that's a vital part of our segmentation pieces. So let's just pictorially show you what we do with the data. So if you sign up for a subscription to Growing Libraries within the product, the first thing you see is a Google map where you define what your service area is. So that may be a city, it could be a county, it could be, in some cases, we have some customers that provide us with a GIS shapefile because they have a very complicated shape where it's a kind of a random image with maybe a donut area cut out that the library doesn't serve, so the tax district or the school district doesn't cover all of these things. So the first thing we do is we ask you, what is your service area and what does it look like? And you can see that then in that image. The next thing we do is then divide your service area into census block groups. And the reason why we do this is to give you more granularity, so we can do a better, tighter analytic. But when you come to the engagement piece, it means you'll be able to target maybe just 1 or 2 of these block groups rather than the whole area. So you can use this for geographic segmentation as well as using other data points. The next thing we let you do is pick out library locations. You can put pins in the map that represent your branches. So that means you're always going to have a context on the maps as to where your locations are. And just in a recent release, we've added the ability to add other locations and change the pin colors. So you could do things like maybe, we have one library that's just doing summer reading in the park, and they wanted to put pins of all the parks in their library district so they could actually see where they were and where their community lived around in comparison to those parks. So putting pins in the map. The next thing we do is, because we're bringing in all of the household data for the whole community, so we pretty much light up every household in your community. So you'll see all the households. And then because we're connected to your ILS, we use a product that we developed called CI Sync, which will effectively turn those households that have library cards a different color on the map. So you're going to get to see library card holders, library not card holders. Then what we can do is we can segment just the non-card holder households. So for growth programs where you're looking to reach into these households and inform them about what the library can offer, you'll know which households we're targeting. And then what you can do is you can then further segment those non-card holder households on things such as presence of children under 6, languages, etc. I'll go into all of the things that we can do in a couple of slides' time. But basically, giving you a view as to where in the community that target group resides in relation, as you can see, to those block groups and to your library locations. So our product, the demographic piece, is called Community Insight. So this is the subscription platform. You log on to the internet, you'll see all of this in there. So the ways that we can split your data up. I mentioned children, so we can show houses that have children present, and you can also filter it on the children's age groups as well. So that's important if you're running different types of programming, maybe for teenagers versus story time, etc. So interests, um, we have a bunch of interest groups that you can, I think 21 different interests. So that might be things like you want to target non-card holder, non-card holder households that have an interest, let's say, in photography. And you have a photography club that meets every Thursday. From the platform, you can target those people and create a postcard and send a postcard straight to those households and invite them along to the photography sessions. So really, really important interest that marries up with a lot of the services libraries offer. We have educational profiles on your community. We have a fantastic new mover program, which targets, we'll go into this in a little more detail in a couple of slides time, but basically targets new residents moving into your community. We can send a postcard weekly, and weekly is important. It's really crucial in a new mover program to hit those new residents when they just move into the community. You don't want to wait 12 months because they're not a new mover anymore, right? So it's important to hit them. The frequency is important. What we can also do as well is we can filter that to only go potentially to, if you want to people who've moved into your community from outside of your community. So not people that have moved across town or up the road, people that are genuinely new to your library service area whose prior address was outside of your service district. So that's key. And we'll go into that in a little more detail. We can also profile your community on age. So for example, if you have seniors programs you want to promote, you can target non-card holders who are over 65 or over 80 or whatever the target group may be that you want to reach into. Home ownership. We also have languages. I can't remember how many languages we have. There's 40, I think, something like that, the primary language in the household. So we're doing some interesting work with partners in that area. We're talking to a number of other vendors, people like Mango Languages, for example, as to how we can help our customers that also have Mango promote their Mango subscriptions into households and use that as a draw to bring those households into the library when they realize that they have those languages resources available. We have some lifestyle. We have 42 different lifestyle clusters or personas, which represents a range of demographic information. So it basically puts people into these persona segments, largely based on income level, home ownership, education level, for example. And it basically ranges across those 42 groups. So you can target types of people that way. I mentioned geography. So the ability to use the geographic filter to say, for example, I only want households, and these filters can all be combined. So you can say, I only want to target my non-card holding households with children under 6 who live in this particular census block group within my district. And as you'll see later, we can give you a count on all of these numbers. So there's no guesswork in terms of how many people, households that's going to relate to. We also have a whole bunch of financial information. As you'll see, the financial information, so using things like net worth, home ownership, income, can actually be useful when you're doing things like fundraising. So not only can you create and send postcards from our platform, you can also create and send letters from our platform too. And we have some of our customers looking at using the platform to do, when they're looking at capital campaigns, to try and profile their community and outreach that way. So that's what the platform gives you. This is a view of the dashboard. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this because if anyone wants, one of the offers obviously on the back of this, if anyone wants to see the platform in action, very happy to set up a web demo for any of you. As you can see here, top left, we're looking at the card holders. Because we're connected to the ILS, this is basically bringing in your card holders by various card types. You can include or exclude different card types as part of the configuration when we do the setup. One thing we're tracking is a historical view of your new card holders. So how have you been growing historically in those card dimensions? And obviously what we'd like to see once you start using Growing Libraries platform to do your outreach is we start to accelerate the growth of particular card types based on your outreach campaigns. This is looking at new movers. So this is historical look back at how many people have moved into your area. You can look here, new to area is the lighter color. Local movers are the people that have moved within the area. And anyone where we don't know what their prior address is also included as a separate bar. We break the community down into households, and you can see with and without library cards. So if I was to click on any of these are all interactive. If I was to click on any of these, you can see here we've got households with children with and without cards, households with seniors with and without cards. If I was to click on any of these, this takes you into the map. So it is a Google map, as you can see. This is Cincinnati and Hamilton County in Ohio. This is their service area. Each one of these areas is a census block group. As I showed you previously, we break that down. Each of these pins is one of their branch locations. And the color coding represents the density, in this case, of non-card holders with children present. So the darker the color, this deep purple here, which is this area up here, has between 304 and 377 households don't have library cards, but have children present in this area, for example. So hopefully that gives you a view. You can export all of these things to PDFs. You can flip between card holders and non-card holders to show you where, well, that looks like. It's a Google map, as I say, so you can get street view, you can zoom in, zoom out, all that stuff. You know, it's a map, right? But it's giving you map of all your community data. In the community insight piece of the product, we can then show you, for example, the age profile of your community. So basically what this is showing you is your community in their 20s. This is the number of people who do not have a card in their 20s versus the number of people that do, and so on through the age brands. So it's showing you roughly where the library compares to the community. So the idea of this is, as you can see, all of this can be dropped out as a PDF, income level, net worth, education level, presence of children, home ownership, home market value, can be dropped out as a PDF. I mentioned interests. These are the 21 groups that we have. So, you can bring out, you can get groups on how does my customer base compare with photography, as we mentioned, or pets, or, some of these other themes may play into services, programming, or content that the library has or is thinking of developing or launching, and you want to use. If you don't have a particularly strong collection in photography, and you don't have a particularly great any programming or events in photography, there's no point shouting about photography necessarily. Every library has a unique set of unique collection, but also has a unique set of programming and expertise and things that you just do and you're good at that you should be using as the sort of the first resort to go out and try and bring people into the library. So hopefully some of these will play into that. But it's always interesting to see your community and through this lens to work out, okay, what kind of untapped potential have we got that we really could? There's a huge number of people in our community that don't have a library card that are interested in photography. Maybe we should build up the collection in photography, and maybe we should create a few events or programming to bring people in and speak to them. So it gives you the ability to reach out to those people individually. I mentioned the lifestyles. There are 42 of them. Here they are, top to bottom, goes all the way down. There's more below the screen, and gives you a little kind of twee snapshot of who these people are, what people in this group tend to look like. There's some text here, income levels, and etc. So if you want to market to those type of people in that way, you can do that too. I mentioned new movers. New movers is a really important part. I think it forms part of almost every single one of our customers' backdrops in terms of what they do for their promotion in the library these days. It's kind of I wouldn't say one and done. What I would say is it's a program that runs in the background that basically will continually welcome and inform your new residents about what the library can offer them. As I say, I think it's always important to target people new to the area because they generally are, when anyone moves home, there's a real kind of urge to kind of find your tribe locally and find things that you want to do and engage with that community. Obviously, there's a choice of things that you can do. If you've got young children, for example, the library is an awesome place, certainly in the summer, for them to go and find new friends through summer reading, etc. So basically what you can do, and this is even cooler, is you can target people that are new to the area, but you can also segment your campaign so you can send a different welcome card to families with kids, to the families that are senior new movers. So you can actually change up the designs and create as many designs. You create all the designs, you basically upload those to our platform, and the postcards go out. But basically, it gives you the ability throughout the year to change those artwork as well. So if you want to talk about summer reading in the run up to summer reading, and then maybe in the fall, you want to change the message for the families bringing their kids in. You want to be telling them about summer reading. You can wait till next year. It's like, here are some other cool stuff you can do for us if you've just moved in now. So really, really important backdrop to topping your cardholder numbers up with those new residents. And then what most libraries will do is on top of that backdrop of new movers, they'll then start strategically creating outreach campaigns to the parts of the community where they see they're either underrepresented or they're strategically aligned with their development plan to go get some more cardholders in those areas. So maybe more children under 6 or more people in a certain community with a certain language, or maybe there's some gaps geographically that you've never particularly reached, or maybe there's a new area that's been developed and you want to get into that area too. So lots of understanding can come from that. So I'm just going to take a pause now, just explain something. So that part of the product that I've shown you, Community Insight, is all available on our platform. So as a SaaS service, you log in, you get all of that stuff, and it's connected to ILS, so it refreshes in real time, and you can dump out gobs of data and download PDFs till your heart's content for strategic planning and or management discussions, etc. Now that's okay. And we found a lot of strategic consultants now are working with us. And when they're doing strategic plans for libraries, they are not using census data now. They want to use household data because it gives you the same information. It's just you know which houses rather than a generic number of houses in the community look like this. And then the difference between doing a community strategic plan that way versus using census is there's no join between the sort of the theory and the action. And as I mentioned before, the engagement piece is critical in this because, I'm not here to basically produce strategic plans for libraries. That's not our game. Our game is all about trying to help more people. We're passionate about libraries, as hopefully you can tell, but we really want more of your community in the library. The only way that's going to happen is if you start engaging with them. It's okay talking about it and having a £500, 500-page strategic plan in your director's office, but it's not really going to help actually where the rubber hits the road. So what we've created is our growth programs, which are all optional. So you can pay for a subscription for the platform, and you can download all that data and come up with some ideas about what you're going to do. But the real value is then taking that data and doing something with it. So the things that you can do in terms of growth programs, we've talked about targeted outreach, and it's very, very targeted. As I say, you can pick households in a particular area of your neighborhood who don't have cards, who have children under 6 with a particular language who are interested in photography. You can get really, really granular, and there's no minimum print run. You can send one postcard. If you do all those filters and you find out there's only one household at the end of that filtering, you create one postcard. That's absolutely fine. There's no minimum print runs. So it's all about trying to be as relevant. I see this as a marketer's playground. We're passionate about marketing as a business. All of our businesses, Collection HQ is a marketing product. If you think about it, it's all about getting the right product. We used to call it right sizing the library, making sure the right proportions of your collection match demand. So supply and demand were aligned. Patron Point clearly is about marketing to your existing customers. Growing Libraries is about marketing to, well, you can use Growing Libraries to market to your existing customers. So you can tell everybody in your community about your photography club. You don't have to just filter on your non-card holders. But targeting outreach is 101. Events, a lot of libraries, you can imagine, very, very popular right now. A lot of libraries using this to promote summer reading to families that don't have a library card, who have children of particular ages, to try and drive attendance and use all of the effort they put into all of their summer reading program to try and use that as a great way to bring kids and their families to join the library. Very, very successful. Mention interests, that's always a good way to do it. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening around interests at the moment. Things that we're working on. I mentioned the partnership with Collection HQ. We've got another partnership we're also announcing at ALA, which will predominantly be around how do we align content and interests with your community. I mentioned location. So we have a couple of customers who are doing things like who have a bookmobile, and that bookmobile does a certain route throughout the library district. and they want to target people around that route with information about the bookmobiles visit rather than shotgun the whole of the community, which really in a larger community, the bookmobile doesn't necessarily play a part to because it doesn't actually visit their areas of the community. I mentioned the new mover program. As I say, that's an automated weekly service. We can get postcards out. You also get email addresses. You can get email addresses for your new movers as well and do segmented follow-ups digitally as well. I mentioned fundraising. It's something that we didn't start with as a concept. It's something that's come to us from our customers saying, well, if we know who our card holders are and we know the wealthier card holders and perhaps the not so wealthy card holders, we can segment our messaging when we're talking about our capital campaigns. And we can target our higher net worth individuals or higher net worth households with different offers. So an interesting concept there. I mentioned strategic planning. You know, to go live on a growing libraries platform, we do not have any TLC libraries currently live on the platform. I was talking to Ria earlier before we started and just saying, you know, that's bizarre. Of all the customers we've got, for some reason, we do not have a TLC library yet. Hopefully we can put that right with some of you guys. But to go live on a growing libraries platform, it's 24 hours. It doesn't take long. So a lot of strategic consultants are actually saying, hey, as part of our strategic planning, we recommend that we subscribe together to growing libraries as part of our work package, and we will plug that in. That gives us the maps of who you're serving, who you're not serving, what your community looks like in all those different ways. But more importantly, we can articulate what we're going to do about it rather than just stop at the pictures. Because if we just stop at the data and the pictures, the strategic plan, then it's hard to get that engagement piece working. Whereas here, some of our consultants are actually working with their clients as libraries for longer than the engagement piece for just the strategic planning. They're actually helping them deliver some of that engagement piece as well using growing libraries. So that's really important. And then the final thing, which came out of the strategic planning conversations, is it's actually pretty hard, I understand, for libraries to survey the non-cardholder part of the community. You know, it's relatively easy to talk to your existing customers because they're in the library. You know, they're coming into the building, they're coming to events or programming, or they're checking out books, or you've got their email addresses and you can use products like Patron Point to email them and send them a link to a digital survey. That's okay. How do you do that with the people you don't know? You haven't got their addresses, you don't have their email addresses, and you can't talk to them apart from going to maybe a farmer's market with a clipboard and a pop-up. So you can use growing libraries to identify non-card holder households and send them either postcards or emails to those surveys, asking them things like, you know, why aren't you a card holder? Have you been a card holder? Would there be anything we could do for you that would encourage you to become a card holder? And you can start engaging people that way. So another use case that came out from conversations with our customers, and I'm sure, you know, if I'm doing this presentation in 12 more months' time, there'll be other circles around this where libraries have come up with other things, kind of other use cases for how they use the data and the platform. So that's the growth programs. So just to have a look at how that works in practice in the product. So basically you go into, shows you the dashboard, I showed you the community insight pieces, which is all the demographic pieces. And then on the growth programs, you can go into a new movers program, which you can build, or I'm going to show you a community program. So you get all of these different filters. So we talked about membership. You can have card holders, non-card holders, or everybody. And then you can go down each of these and you can say, okay, I either want to not filter on these things or filter on age, education, households with children with different ages, etc. And you go all the way down here. And then at the bottom of this page, I couldn't get it all on one screen. You basically say, do you want to send postcards or letters, or do you want to include email as an option as well? So that's basically one either postcard and email, or letter and email, or just these on their own. When you press calculate, that basically tells you how much you're going to be paying based on the selections you've chosen above. And if you want to, you can go back and rechange those selections and then come back and recalculate, and that will change this number. So if you're trying to get a handle on how many households it look like these things, then you just run those filters, press calculate, it gives you a number back. And then if that came back at, let's say, $15,000 based on the sample size, you're like, oh, that's way too much. I've only got $2,500 to spend on this campaign. You put in 2,500 in here, which basically caps We would then randomly send postcards to people in your community that match the parameters you defined above, won't spend a cent more than $2,500, which you've agreed in here as your cap. You give the program a name, and then you press confirm program. And what that basically does is orders the data and effectively send you an invoice, and then your program will appear in my programs here. And when you go into my programs, what you're going to see is the one you've just created, and it's going to ask you to upload your artwork front and back for a postcard, the letter format, etc. So once you've uploaded those, we're good to go. We've got payment for the invoice. You've now uploaded your artwork, and we send that out for you. So we take care of the whole thing. The final piece of the jigsaw for my programs, the bit you see, and the cool bit, is because we know the addresses of the people who didn't have a library card that you sent the cards to tell them to join the library. Because we're connected to the ILS, we now see those addresses appearing in the ILS as new cardholders. So you get an attribution report that says in this campaign there were, for example, 1,000 postcards sent out, and you've now got 176 new members have joined the library from that campaign. So it gives you the ability to get return on investment for each campaign. As I say, there's no minimum as to the number of cards you can send. So we really do encourage you to start coming up with different designs, different wording, and creating A/B testing to measure the effectiveness of different designs and messaging to convert messaging and outreach into engagement and cardholder signups. So that's what we want to try and offer you. That's the kind of the picture, if you see. So I'm just going to summarize that again. So Growing Libraries has two pieces of the jigsaw. The first piece is the platform, which you get your dashboard, you get all those community insights. We have a bunch of resources in the product as well, sort of downloadable PDFs, kind of how-to guides and videos on community engagement and what good postcards look like and email campaigns and those types of things. So that is an annual subscription, and the annual subscription is based on the population served by your library. Incredibly affordable. I think a lot of libraries are very, very surprised when they actually hear just how little this costs. Just to give you an idea, a ballpark figure, a library serving, let's say, a 50,000 population, the price for this is under $3,000. So it's a very, very affordable subscription. Okay, that gets you all of that. You can have as many of your staff logging in as you need. And we have a couple of subscription levels. We have an administrator level, which basically allows you to manage the system and order those postcards and those growth programs. Or we have a read-only access for your other staff members who you perhaps want to share the data with, but you don't want them to have the ability to do things like, order postcards and commit the library to expenditure. So that's what you get for the subscription. And then completely optionally, you don't have to do any of this, or you can do as much of this as you need to, is the growth programs, which are those postcards, the letters, the new mover programs, and the emails. So they're all completely optional. And as I say, you can send as few or as many of those as you wish in a year. So hopefully that makes sense. Two pieces of the puzzle, but as I say, the second half, hopefully I'll repeat myself, is really, really vital for me personally, because without that, the first piece is nice and it's important to drive the second piece, but without the second piece, it will always fall short. If you ended up having to take a census data that said 34% of your households have children in under 6, for example, and then you've got to then try and go away and buy some data from a data provider, do some postcard design on your own, dedupe that data you purchase with your existing cardholder list, which in itself, I'm not going to get into the detail, but address deduplication is never fun or easy or quick. Because we've automated it, it does become easy and quick. But to do that manually and then take that print job and give it to a printer and then get those cards shipped out to a USPS office and have them delivered and try and somehow track the performance of those campaigns, and even trying to get a printer to print one postcard for you, good luck with that. It's not, we've tried to put this together to give you everything you need to be successful here, just based on everything I know, everything that our print partners tell us, everything that we know from the world of postcards and direct mail, everything we've learned over the years with libraries and ILS and the foibles of all the data and all the things that we're trying to do here. So hopefully we've kind of encapsulated a It's all we do. We don't do anything else. We're not looking at, book checkouts. We're not looking at collection development anymore. We're not looking at all those other challenges that all the other vendors out there and all of RIA's colleagues in TLC do a great job of all of that stuff. This is all we do. It's very, very specialized. It's very, very unique. It works. And hopefully it's of interest to you. So my offer to you before I wrap up, I'm just going to double check, see how many slides I've got, is that's what we want. We all want a more engaged community. That is a link to our website, and the QR code will take you there. I'm going to be at ALA in Chicago. So for any of you that are going to be at ALA in Chicago in a couple of weeks' time, hit me up. Love to see you there. We can meet there. I can do demos there. We have a drinks reception there that you're very welcome to come to if you'd like. I can get you invites for that. I'm going to be there from actually Wednesday, a couple of days before the event, all the way through to Monday. And if anyone wants a web demo for their team, if you go to the website, you can book a web demo. There's a calendar on there, a demo link on there, so you can do that for yourselves. And as I say, we do have a special promotion running, which we're actually running at ALA as well. So you guys are getting early access to that, as we're doing a free setup for anyone that subscribes to this before the end of July. So for any libraries that want to take a demo, have a look at the product themselves, review how this all works, we'd love to show you what we do. And regardless of it, it's been great. I love sharing this with people, because even without the product, hopefully I've educated some of you about how to use data to better engage and understand your communities. So that's me, Ria. I can see Ria's come back on the screen. She's much more attractive to look at than I am. So I'm going to, I think I have one more slide, which is Ria's first slide. So over to you, Ria.
Thanks, Ian. And yes, for those of you who want more information, stay tuned. I'm going to put a poll up at the end of this. You can let us know so we can help get you scheduled with a live demo if you'd like to see that, especially if you're not attending ALA and you want to get access to that. So stay tuned. I also see we have some questions coming in. Please keep those coming. I'll get to those shortly. But as Ian mentioned, on the TLC side, we do ILS. So I wanted to mention a couple of things about our services as well. So with Library.Solution, it is 100% web-based. And so one of the values that you get out of this going alongside with the growing libraries data is once you've got that map that you can see where folks don't have library cards, that dark purple on that map that Ian showed. We've seen a lot of customers have success in general doing outreach pop-up events with Library.Solution because you can take that laptop directly out to wherever you're going to be. You can get folks signed up with a library card without having to bring the paperwork back to the library and then do manual data entry to get that into the system. So because it's web-based, you can literally sign up for your patron cards right at those pop-up events, and then pairing that with growing libraries data, you can plan where those events make the most sense. So not just down by the farmers market, because that's what we've always done, but actually this corner of our area is underserved and we haven't been able to reach out to them. And there's a really great coffee shop right there. Let's go hunker down and do a little library pop-up stand. So all you need is your laptop and a little bit of data, and you can really get a lot of traction there. If we can go to the next slide, please, Ian. Thanks for driving the slide deck for us. The next thing I wanted to mention is that we do also have a dedicated library app. So once you're at that pop-up and you've got someone interested, they don't have to wait till they're back home to get online, see what the community has. You can sign them up for a library card that day, and then they can download the app right on their phone and get immediate access to any of the resources and books and place holds and check out ebooks right from their phone. So it's kind of that nice hand-in-hand, immediate instant gratification that everyone's looking for, right from one event that you could run. And then the third thing I wanted to mention on the next slide is our TLC Engaged Spaces platform. So Ian did mention that events were a really great way to, or you can market your events that you're already doing within your library space. And with Engaged Spaces, this is a place where you can manage events right in the platform. And it does also tie into that mobile app, so you've got the really great integration. But an idea that I wanted to leave you all with is that you don't have to just market your current programs, although you can, and that is highly encouraged. But you can use this data to see all of that interest, and maybe you aren't doing that photography event, and you have a huge group of people who are really interested in photography in your area. That might be an opportunity for you to set up more of those events and then continue that marketing engagement. So TLC does offer an engagement platform. It also does room booking and has some built-in messaging. But again, if you don't know who is not coming because they're not patrons, it's good to have that data to be able to get in front of them. So I think those are the only slides I had for library.solution, but I will mention we are also offering a promotion for TLC Go and TLC Engaged Spaces. Similar to Ian's, we are offering 15% through the end of July for anyone who signed up for this webinar. So if you are interested in these new to you services, please reach out and we'll get you some information after the webinar. All right, let's see what we've got on our next slide. I believe we're going into a question and answer. And I did see some questions come in. Before I get to those, because I know some folks might need to drop off, let me launch a quick poll. So this is whether or not you would like to receive more information either from Ian or from TLC about any of the services mentioned. We will reach out to you afterwards, probably tomorrow. Give us a chance to compile all the data and we will get back in touch with you about this. So I'll leave that up for just a moment. And while we go to Q&A, Ian, the big question that is coming up has to do with the data. Hang on, there's a few here. Let me try to combine these. The first is how are you getting the community interest data? And especially someone asks the non-geographic or census-based data. So where is that coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. A good question. So yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, it comes up in all of our demos and all of our conversations with prospects and customers. So there's a whole world out there of consumer data. So big business uses consumer data to segment its customer base, which is kind of where this whole concept has come from. So there are businesses like you probably heard some of these names, Experian and Reference Solution. These businesses have huge swathes of consumer data for the whole of the USA. And the data that we use is there's actually just a small subset of what's actually out there. It's quite staggering actually what the data they have on file. So the way this data is consumed is basically these big businesses, they call themselves, they're data brokers, but they're actually, I see them as data compilers. What they actually do is they piece together lots of pieces and lots of signals of information that come in from lots of different sources. So, for example, mortgage companies, credit card companies, magazine subscriptions, federal information, government information, property information. So, for example, obviously we haven't revealed them in the Growing Libraries app because I didn't think they'll be of interest, but things like the square footage of people's basements and when was their AC system last replaced and the type of vehicle they drive and all these different pieces of information that are useful for different. So, if I was selling a service like Growing Libraries to the auto industry, some of those kind of auto related facts would be more interesting. How old is your car? When did you last change your vehicle? Type of car you drive as a family. All that information's out there. All we've done is taken a subset of that information, which we believe will apply to a library. So things like, those interest groups, because they kind of map onto. So those interest groups are largely compiled from things like magazine subscriptions. So if you subscribe to, a kind of a photography magazine, then that interest is going to get flagged against your information. It then gets compiled with the information that these businesses hold on you. And just a question I'm sure if it hasn't come up already, Ria, will come up at some point is around privacy. So these big data compilers. So here's an example. So let's say, for example, you sign up to Good Photography magazine. There'll be a thing on it that says, are you okay with us sharing your information with our partners? And if you say no, then that never gets passed on. If you say yes, that's how you get flagged as being a photography enthusiast. If then at any point you want to opt out of that information being shared with anybody, you contact the data compilers who then opt you out. We're now seeing more and more states, California taking quite an active role in this, where there are data brokerage registers, which we ourselves belong to, as well as our data partners belong to, which means that anybody who wants to opt out of all this stuff. So they can just basically opt out. They opt out at source, and then their information is wiped and will never get into the hands of us or a library through those relationships. So it's all, this isn't dark web stuff. This is all completely white hat stuff. It's all used by businesses every day of the week. New mover postcards, they come from the National Change of Address Register, and they use things like utility connects, disconnects to let people to know that people have moved home. All of that information, so when you move, you may get a card from a pizza shop or a local insurance broker or someone that cuts your grass. There's the welcome wagon has been around for years, right? This is the library welcome wagon. We're just hooking up with the same data. It's not, as to say, we're not suddenly invented a new industry. We've just shaped a solution around public libraries, as we did with Patron Point, taking marketing automation and shaping that around how libraries can use that type of solution. So yeah, a lot in there. Happy to talk to people. The partner that we work with, we work with, our data comes from about 6 or 7 or 8 different sources, but one of the primary ones is a company called Data Axle, which a lot of libraries will know as Reference Solutions USA, who sell business data to public libraries as a reference solution that consumers and patrons can come in and basically look up data on local businesses. They have a huge consumer division, and that's where we get some of our consumer data from.
Yeah, great response. And you were right. The very next question was about data privacy. I think you're exactly right. When you change your address, I know when I moved, I got the whole welcome packet. We got furniture offers. If you didn't bring new furniture with you, come buy new furniture from your local furniture store. So I think the concern with libraries is because there is such this idea of patron privacy and making sure that everything is kept safe, that gets addressed. And I think you did that well enough to say this isn't unethical data scraping. This is
Yeah,
information that exists in the world, and
yeah,
we're using that to our benefit to bring more services to libraries.
of course. I mean, one of the things that we use the patron data for here is so if you want to send a postcard to people that are non-card holders, you need to know who your card holders are. So we use the connection to the ILS to know which households have a card and then suppress it so those people do not receive a card. So that's one of the things. Um, but we're never profiling at household level, so nobody ever gets to see what somebody makes and what they vote and what their interests are and stuff as a household level. It's always aggregated at a larger number at census block group level. So staff can't zone in on their neighbors and work out how much their next door neighbors make and whether they've got library cards and stuff, because it's anonymized at that level.
And that was going to be my next question on here has to do with how I'm going to combine two. So how are the addresses being managed and stored is part one, and then who is actually doing the mailing of the postcards? Is that growing libraries, or do the libraries have to get that data and mail those postcards?
No, no, no. Okay, so the addresses, basically we take care of all the addresses. So effectively the way the addresses work is we as I showed on the presentation, basically the library describes the filter. So they say I want non-card holders with children under 6, and behind the scenes, when the library says I only want $1,500 worth, we will go away and buy $1,500 worth of data. If they want to do the whole lot, which came out $5,000, we go away and get all of the data and we bring it in. In terms of the mailing, Growing Libraries takes care of the whole thing. All the library has to do is upload the front and back design for the postcards. We take care of the whole thing. And then in my programs, where it says my growth programs, the library will see where that postcard is in stages. Is it in production or has it been sent? So we take care of the whole thing. You can believe it's not me doing that posting. I'm not running down to the mailbox, putting these things through people's mailboxes. We have printing and the USPS do the mailing for us. So we're getting mail scan results back to show where things have been mailed. So, from a library's perspective, they don't need to call us and say, hey, have my cards gone out yet? They're going to know that. So yeah, we take care of the whole thing from front to bottom. And what we also do is the library receive one copy of every card they mail to their library address. So they'll get a copy physically of the postcard that they sent.
It's nice, something to put in your portfolio, right? Or your strategic
Yeah, of
plan at the end of the year.
course.
All right, I have a few other questions coming in. Some are functional, some are about strategic. So let's go functional first. Are the block groups based on already established neighborhoods?
They are census block groups. So they are the for, I'm not entirely ensure the number, but the way a census block group does is the US Census divides a community into these block groups, and each block group is made up of a certain number of households. So in a downtown metropolitan area, sorry, in a highly residential area, the block groups are quite small because there's lots of houses in a tight square. In an area which is more rural, where there are fewer properties, the block group is physically larger because it has to contain. I can't remember the number of households. I could probably Google it and it'll tell me. But how many, on average, how many households roughly are in a census block group? But every block group we divide the community into is the official US Census block group.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, as much as I love the pink and purple, someone wants to know, can you change the color of the dashboard so the charts can be added to our
Now,
annual reports with our own branding?
not at the moment, but that's a good idea. As I say, we're a software business, right? We don't have a huge number of customers, and if somebody says, "Can you do that?" the answer is no, not right now. But that's maybe something we could look at. And I appreciate, if you're TLC and you say, "Can you do that?" You've got a lot more customers to take into consideration, a lot more functionality you're already working on. So I could give you three examples of functionality that some of our earlier customers asked us for about 3 months ago that are already live in the product now because we can move that quick. We're quite agile in those things. So yeah, not at the moment, but if it's that important and the deal's worth it, then we can consider doing that sort of development.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last question I see on here, to speaking of those annual reports or strategic planning, when is the best time to do this research? Is it only useful when you're creating those strategic plans, um, or regular, what is the regular marketing cadence?
Yeah, I mean, good question actually, and I'm not entirely sure I'll get this right, but I don't think there's ever because I think a lot of libraries do a 3 or 5 year plan, and then it becomes almost a kind of a deceased document. It's almost like writing, it's like when your car goes in for the whatever you call it in the US, the roadworthy test, to make sure it passes emissions or whatever. That's only good for the day it got tested, right? Tomorrow it could be all sorts of bad news. Um, so I think the good thing about growing libraries is the data in the plan is live and it's living and it basically evolves. So I think, you know, there's because of the cost of doing this is quite minimal compared to bringing a strategic consultant in with census data, yada yada yada. This would be quite cheap to do this. I would assume the way this works is you you plug it in, you get your dashboard, you look at where your opportunities are, and there'll be some big opportunities, some medium-sized opportunities, and some smaller opportunities. And you'll probably choose to pick on the bigger ones first, and you'll work your way through those. You'll see how they're doing, see how you're progressing, and then you'll move on to some of the medium-sized ones as you tick all those boxes. So I think it's just a progression. I think it starts as soon as you sign up and it never ends. It's like, when does marketing stop? It doesn't, right? There's always work to do. What we know is you can't grow your library through retaining your current customers. You do need to top up that funnel. And we know that having more library customers in the community makes things like funding easier. It makes you a more attractive partner for other organizations. It makes it far harder for people to cut your budgets and reduce the funding on, which obviously is very important to libraries now. So the more support you can garner in the community, I would suggest now is a good time to be starting that, not at the time when you really need that to happen, because you don't have the luxury of time at that point. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
now is the right time.
Exactly. And I think adding this to your regular cadence of when you're running reports. So whether that's weekly, monthly, hopefully not more than monthly, but maybe quarterly, when you're
Mhm.
grabbing that information, I would grab these snapshots as well. And then that way you can also see your impact as it grows. So if you have
Mhm.
a whole year's worth of data showing the expansion of your library cards, that is so powerful to bring into your next board meeting because maps are powerful. When you can show the map actually growing out and seeing those colors change, that is how you get funding. That's how you say we did this. We can track the data and have an actual impact of what we've done to bring in more card holders. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%.
All right, that was the last question I saw that came in. So let's go ahead and jump to our next slide and just do a couple of wrap-up items. If you're typing that question, hit enter now and I'll try to get to it. But I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Like I said, this is being recorded, so you can grab a copy of this tomorrow at tlcdelivers.com/webinars. That's also where our archive lives. So if you missed our last webinar, we were talking about how to build out those annual reports to share that data. So if that's interesting to you, please go ahead and check this out and then add growing libraries into the ways that you can build that story into the future. And so it will be available tomorrow. You'll all get the email for it, like I said. And our next webinar is going to be about change management. We're still putting that together, so keep an eye on the website when that becomes available. All right, Ian, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your story and hopefully getting some folks excited about new data and new ways to get patrons into their libraries. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ria. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the next one.